Okay, we are live. We are live. Come into the room. Come into the room. All right, let me go ahead and go onto my Facebook because we all know it is not live until I actually share it. So let me get out of it and go take care of this right away. There I am. I'm going to edit my privacy, go public, change. Oh, sister. There we go. Add her to the post. And you can now, all right. So here we go. My name is Nettie Long Poetry. I am your host today for They Took My Choice Away Survivor Series. We are here with none other than author and survivor Esther Colon, and she is from Kissimmee, Florida, I believe. I know she's from Florida, but I'm going to have her come on now without any further ado so she can probably introduce herself, and we'll go through the icebreaker as we always do. Um, my sister Esther.
God bless everyone.
Oh, I
God
took
bless
my mouse
everyone.
off. One second, let me do this layout. Boom, here we go.
Okay.
So, this is our guest today. She comes highly recommended, and guess by who? David and Kelly Torres. So, thank you guys for always just, giving me suggestions. And I'm just glad there's a platform such as this to be able to share intricate stories and details of stories to help people be able to, just to be able to relate.
Amen.
There's not too many people that can articulate their story and tell it in a way that is relatable, because oftentimes a lot of people are just kind of scared to talk about how it made them feel and how, because sometimes these are our dirty little secrets, that really make us feel dirty. And sometimes we don't even share them until we're well into adulthood before we even, come face to face with even dealing with our traumas. Because we subliminally put them in the back of our minds, and we do that as children to help us be able to cope. We do these as children, not even realizing that we do it as children, because it's almost like we kind of disassociate ourselves with it, in a sense, because we don't know how to articulate, we don't know how to speak about it, and then we don't trust anybody to be able to talk about, what has happened to us. So, um, I always often say that I am just a vessel, and I hope. One second, because I've got a whole lot of rudeness going on in the background. I need to take care of this. Woo! I'm so sorry. Um, so we're just trying to wrap up at home, and I just finished cooking, so now everybody is trying to eat. So I apologize if y'all hear that in the background. Um, so what I was saying was I am just a vessel, and that's all I'm trying to be. And I hope that today, after you share your story, you realize that you're being used by God too. So um
Amen.
what the icebreaker that I like to start out with is, tell us anything about your childhood that you most remember, but that you are very happy in your happy moments of childhood. Is there anything that sticks out um, at all?
There is a memory that I've always kept dear to me, and it's that I must have been around 5 or
Mm,
6 years old, And like my parents were in church. They were in a really strict church. So I remember that we were outside in our house and the moon was really, really, really big. And my dad used to sing this song, Ese toro enamorado de la luna. I have no idea what the song is or where it came from, but one of the memories it has always stuck up in my head. It's me getting up on my dad's feet, and he was telling me, "No, we can't dance because if Pastor sees us dancing." But then he was like, "No, but let's dance anyways." And he started singing "Ese toro enamorado de la luna" because we could see the moon. It was huge, and we were dancing on outside of our house. So that's a memory that has always stuck out in my head of my dad when I was very young.
Oh, that's a sweet memory. Were you close to your family as your parents? Were you close to close with them growing up?
We were normal, I think.
Okay. I don't know why I asked that, but I know that like when I was growing up, I had strict parents. I
Yes.
wasn't allowed to do a whole lot of things, but I felt like, you know what, if I was part of a, if I was able to play basketball like I wanted to, if I wanted to, cheer like I wanted to, I probably would have gotten into a lot of mischievous things in my childhood, and that I probably would be taken to my grave right now if I didn't expose myself.
Yes.
But yeah, like,
Likewise.
yeah, so yeah, I felt that. Well, I mean, really, this platform is for you. I know that you recently are about to release a book. Now, when is that? When is
It
that
is
going to be released?
Thursday. There's
Thursday. And
this
we wanted to
Thursday
get this
coming up.
interview in so that we can show everybody the book.
Yeah, so at the opening of the book is this Thursday at our yearly conference that we have. Relevo is at our church, 2830 North Orange Blossom Trail. It's
Mhm.
a 3-4 day event, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as well. And the opening of the book will be the first day. So we're going to be selling throughout the conference. I'm
Wow,
super
that's
nervous.
amazing. Well, you don't need to be nervous because God already appointed you it for such a time as this, and
Amen.
this was already, already God already saw this, and He saw you through it. So now it's just the manifestation of blessing others with it. And
Yeah.
so, hey, we have to start somewhere, and you're doing it. You're not like me stuck on chapter 5 for years and years and years. So,
It took me a
um,
few years.
yeah, so a
But
lot of people think like, oh, I can just, some people, I know people right now that have got like 5 books under them and they did it under 5 years. And
oh,
I'm like, whew, that's a whole lot of
yeah.
writing. That's
I
a whole
actually
lot of,
love writing.
do
But
you?
yeah, but
Okay.
I always wrote poems type of thing, not like a book. So the book itself, it was a challenge, but it was good.
Yeah. So
It was a good
okay.
challenge.
So you a poet.
Oh, I like writing. Let's just say
Okay.
that.
So you like poems, and that's part of
I like
poetry. And
writing
so,
poems. Yes.
oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. Well, without further ado, let's just dive right in. Okay.
Um,
Go
no,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
I know that you had some bullet points that you wanted to discuss. I think it's important that we take our viewers on a ride through your life. So if we can start from the beginning, from your childhood on, and whatever you would like to share. If there's, I want you to be completely transparent. This is a platform for that. We discuss as much as you'd like to discuss, and then we always ended up with we tie it up at the end, giving God all the glory
Amen.
for what He's done and how He's manifested in your life. So, um, this is our testimony to be able to help others. So,
Amen.
the platform's
So
yours.
I'm number 4 out of 10 children.
Mm.
So I'm one of the eldest. And as we were growing up, I thought that we had a pretty normal life. I have to admit, I have two awesome parents. My father already passed away, and when we were very little, my parents were called into the ministry. We used to live in Puerto Rico, and we came here very early. I was, I think I was like 7 or 8. I think. We were very small when we first got here. And I think my youngest sister was actually born here. And it was back then, like my father was an awesome man. Man, he was one of those pastors that he was everything. He was the carpenter, the psychiatrist, the doctor, they would call him out whatever time he would get up and go. And the church absolutely loved him. And so did we. But I think back then, everyone used to get so involved and so into what ministry was. And I think in the beginning, and from what I remember, it was not as it is now, that everyone tries to balance it themselves out when it comes into ministry, church, and kids, and everything else in the middle, a full-time job, a ministry, and a family of 8 still in the house, for it to be like even more on top of things. Like, so I think he was doing the best that he could with the tools that he had. Let's just say that to begin with. Because a lot of people seem to concentrate, oh my God, he was a bad father. No, he was an awesome father. He just, I think, didn't know how to balance it all very well. And little by little, we started like going like kind of like into the shadow, where like it's church, church, church first, and then everything else. And I think that's something that I talk about in the book, that we need to learn how to balance our all our little pieces of life. And little by little, we stopped seeing much of him. It was more like he used to go to work, he used to come back, we had to get ready to go to church, and then after church, he drove everybody home. By the time he got home, we were already asleep, and it was day after day. And then we had church every day. So it wasn't like you get days in between. It was service Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like that. And you start missing that paternal connection. You start looking to someone else. You start looking to who's there that can fill that void in your life. And I started looking at. I was looking at church. I would look at everyone. I've always been very like hyper rápida, I've always been like all over the place type of child, interesada en todito. And I started looking around as to like, oh, mira, look at how that dad is with his kids. And that's what I want. And I want a father like that. And in my little tiny mind, I started picturing in my head what a father should be, and I put my eyes on this man at church that I used to see him with his kids, and I used to think like that's what I want in a dad. And I'm honestly not sure if his mentality was from the beginning where it was at when it started all. I'm not quite sure if that was his plan from the beginning. I never asked. But I started getting close to him when I was like 9 years old. And he became part of the family. He became a friend of the family. He became somebody that my parents would not allow us to stay in anyone's house. But for some reason, they started letting us stay over there at his house. When I was around 11 and a half, he started putting me on his lap a little longer. He started sitting me next to him, um, touching my hair, making comments like, "Oh, you're so beautiful. You're such a beautiful girl," and things like that. So I started like liking the attention. I was like, "Oh, he's noticing me," like. But I
Mhm.
was looking at it in a child's type of way,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons that I title the book "Through My Eyes." Um,
Mm.
I always say I have 10 brothers and sisters, so if any one of us was to tell what my father was, we all had a different, picture of him. This is what I remember. And
Mhm.
then he started. He would bring us to his house and he would put a movie on and he would sit me next to him and then put a blanket over us and he would start touching me. And I didn't really understand what was going on, to be honest. Um, I can't even say that I was afraid. I was more confused. I
Sure.
was like, what is going on? Is this okay? Is this not okay? And again, this is one of the things that I also bring up in the book, that we have to speak to our kids. We have to speak to our kids and make them aware. How far can an adult go with you? What is considered wrong? Where is that line that we don't cross and an adult is not allowed to cross? How is an adult allowed to talk to you? What words can they use? What words do you scream and say, hey, that adult said this to me, you know? And I think that is one of the biggest, that's my loudest message in the book. Please teach your kids, speak to your kids, make them aware, make a connection with them in a way where if anything should happen, your child is going to go up to you and say, hey, you know that man right there, he said this and this and that, or that man right there touched me like this, like that. I did not have that.
Yeah.
I had,
So, right. So
yeah.
oftentimes this happened, and the reason why it happens is because there isn't a safe environment for the child to go to the parent. There wasn't anything, or there wasn't really anything established. Being able to trust your parent, because when you think about a parent through the eyes of a child, um, they're the ones that really regulate what goes on around us, right? And
Mm-hmm.
not only that, they are the disciplinarian. And you do something wrong, the repercussions is yelling, and or
Mm-hmm.
it's a spanking, and so they're really, if you the way that the picture that you painted was church every day. So where was the balance for home, where in a private setting you are making parents are making these strides and these necessary balances in their life, where they're offering, hey, you can talk to me about anything. Well,
Exactly.
in the meantime, hey, I'd like to know, has anybody said anything inappropriate that might have made you feel, uncomfortable? And so
Exactly.
these are, I mean, this is how I am now. It wasn't what I experienced as I was growing up. I didn't have my parents say, hey, I noticed something today that kind of made me feel uncomfortable. Did it make you
Mm-hmm.
feel uncomfortable? And so what we did is, what I realized is that my parents too were pastors of a church, and every you can miss your children just by being available for other people. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're saying so many similarities of what I felt as a child.
Exactly.
And I love doing this because then I don't feel alone. You know what I mean? I love hearing other people's story, because there was a long time I thought I was alone. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is why this happens. There's there I have segments on my show just about parent accountability, honey, and you're hitting them right on the nose. Like, it's so important to have these different types of dialogues with our
Yes.
children, because they're not going to know how to articulate it. You got to help them. You're
Yes.
still teaching, they're still growing. Why do you think they go to school for the next 13 years of their lives, and then so on and so forth, if they want degrees and things? It's a learning process, and every year it takes a certain level of experience. And so, again, same thing with your children. You can't expect them to come to you, especially if you haven't created that safe space for them to come to talk to you about anything.
Mm-hmm. And
You know what I'm saying?
I think that also, I think even till this day, we kind of look at our kids and we think to ourselves, they're innocent. The devil doesn't look at them. There's no evil on them. Yes, they're innocent, But I strongly believe that the same way that God has a plan for you, the devil also looks at you and says, you know what? I'm going to plan something for him because I'm going to make sure that his life or her life is destroyed. That is his job. That's why he's here. So we cannot think to ourselves, they're just kids, they're innocent, I'm going to wait until they're older and then explain to them how it works. No, I think that we need to start explaining to them how it works since they're little, obviously at their level and to their understanding, but it has to be a conversation that gets more intense as they grow because they're going to be able to understand it better. But we have to put into our minds, hey, you know what? I need to stick to the plan that God has drawn for my son. So I'm going to make sure that I connect to that plan and make sure that whatever plan the devil has in place is broken. But we don't. We are so like, Señor, these are my kids and they're yours and protect them, but we don't do our part, unfortunately.
You and I are gonna have to do a part two on this. Just on parent accountability for sure. For
Yes.
sure.
And then, and unfortunately, one of the saddest thing about my story is the fact that the templates that I had were my parents. Unfortunately, that's what I learned. And I made so many of the same mistakes that my parents made with me, and a lot of the times when I'm talking and somebody listens to me and somebody hears and says, yeah, but your kids, but you did this, but you're right. I did all those things. I did make all those mistakes. That's why I'm speaking out loud and saying it out loud. Don't make the mistakes my parents did. Don't make the mistakes I repeated of my parents. Let's be different. So I'm telling my kids, hey, be careful with this. Hey, remember this. Even my kids are older now. They're 28, 26, and 24. So it's like, I already made a lot of mistakes. I'm trying to make sure that now they don't repeat the same mistakes I did and that their kids get a better version of the parents that they can be with them.
Exactly.
After
Yes.
after that, like I was in a very confusing world, I have to admit. And when I was around 12 years old, it got very intense and it started getting more real and more real. And he started asking me, is it okay if I kiss you? Is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do that?
Now, how
And
much
at
older was he?
15 years,
15 years older.
15 years. And at 12 years old, he had sex with me for the first time. In my head, by that point, he had convinced me that he was my boyfriend. It wasn't when it came to him, his rapes were manipulative. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't aggressive, they weren't um brutal, they were manipulative. It was all in my head. He was my boyfriend. In my head, all girls were going through the same thing in my to the way that he explained it to me, what the life that I was living was how you became a woman.
Mm.
So I used to look at every other little girl and think to myself, I wonder who she's with that she can't tell anybody. Or I wonder who she is because that's the way I used to think. I used to think that every little girl had a boyfriend that they couldn't tell anybody about.
Mm.
That's the way that he made it happen. When
Wow.
I was in it that relationship kept going until I was like 13 years old. When I was 13, I started thinking to myself, because let me tell you, at 13 years old, I don't think not even at 18. Well, maybe at 18, you're a little bit more prepared for marriage and things like that, or sex or whatever. But
Mhm.
I think that at 12 years old, a girl's body, a girl's mind, a girl's spirit, a girl's soul, a girl's anything. It is not in any way, shape, or form prepared for any sexual contact activity whatsoever. You are not ready. If you are in this place, if this is happening to you, it is not okay. It is not correct. It is not the way a woman is made. It is not right. And at that point, I was thinking to myself, there's got to be something wrong. Why can I tell my parents that I have a boyfriend? Why can I tell my family that I have a boyfriend? Why do I feel so horrible every time that he's with me? You know? And I used to think to myself, and it started getting to the point that I was like, God's not looking at me. My parents are not looking at me. Nobody is looking at me. I'm here by myself. So there's gotta be something wrong. So I decided to, I was, at that point, I was always afraid. I love my dad. I absolutely loved my dad, but I was afraid of him. He was like the old type of parents, you know, que si cuando se acaba la correa, it was like, I'm gonna go after you. So, and he was a little harsh when it came to hitting and things like that. He was rough. So I was afraid of him, but I got the courage to go talk to him, and I went and talked to him, and I told him, "Hey, Dad, you know, I wanted to talk to you about something. This is happening, and this guy kissed me in a way that I don't think he's supposed to be kissing me, and he's touching me in a way that he's not supposed. I don't think he's supposed to be touching me." I didn't even get to further than that when my dad was like, "You know what? We're going to deal with this. We're going to figure this out. Just go to bed. We'll talk about it." And I thought to myself, forget it. When I wake up tomorrow, my father is going to kill me. You know, something's going to happen. And I was ready for it. The next day when I got home from school, the guy's car was outside my house. So I thought to myself, great, you know, this is it. I went upstairs, and when I went upstairs, they were sitting in the table, you know, talking, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, like everything looks all right. And when I got there, my dad pretty much started telling me, "Hey, you're misunderstanding what this brother is telling you or is doing or whatever. His caress are like loving for as a daughter father type of thing. It's like you're misunderstanding the love that he's giving you. You're young, and when you're young, you misunderstand feelings and emotions and whatever." And the way that he was looking at me, I was thinking to myself, he's gonna kick my butt, so I need to hush. And the way that the guy was looking at me, I was even afraid of his look, because he's telling me like, "No, I love you like a daughter. You're misunderstanding the love that I'm giving you," and things like that. And I was so confused because the reaction that I expected from my dad was a complete different reaction. So seeing him so calm and then seeing him have a normal conversation with this guy, I was I was lost.
Wow.
My brain was like go like all over itself
Oh,
and
wow.
thinking like, I don't understand. You know, am I right or am I wrong? And then when he left, my dad obviously kicked my butt and told me that I was like bringing false testimony about a man of God, and that I, for things that I was saying, that I can up a family, and because of the things that I was saying, I could make a man's testimony go on the ground and things like that, the way the parents used to talk to before. So, in all honesty, I went to bed more confused than ever. And I honestly started thinking to myself, wait a minute, you know, if this is the way that parents are with kids and everything, like, are other girls and other boys going through this with their parents and things like that, you know? So I was so confused into thinking and wondering, is this okay or is it not okay? Am I the one that's wrong, or is this the one, whatever's happening is what's wrong? After that, I and this is something that I emphasize 100 times. We need to pray for our children before they go to school. We need to present them to God, and we need to make them aware that we're praying for them and praying over them and presenting them to God in a way where wherever you stand, you are in the presence of God and He is watching over you. And that's something that we need to bring back, because I remember my parents used to pray for us, you know? But even then, I remember that I went to school that day and I started asking all my little friends, how can you end your life? If I wanted to die, how would I do it? And unfortunately, all my friends had at least one or two, three ideas of how you can take your life.
Wow.
And I never even consider how sad that was until I got older. At that moment, it just seemed like a normal conversation. And I remember that I went home. I I had a jean skirt on, and I remember that I went to the kitchen and I put a knife in my skirt, facing up, and I was gonna jump from my second floor, the second floor to my house. And I figured when I fall, well, the knife is gonna stab me, which was an idea that one of the kids at school gave me. Um,
Let's
and
let's stop right here
okay.
just for a minute because you've given me a lot. Now I did. I was able to read up to like chapter, I think 3, where you do talk about, um, your thoughts, the decision of wanting to commit suicide. But it was. I felt like it was more so as an adult as well. Like, right. So I don't want to fast forward too soon, but um, wow. Just give me a minute to process.
Well, that time I was 13. I wasn't an adult.
Right. So you were 13, but
Yeah.
prior to your decision of one, or your thoughts leading you to want to commit suicide, the fact that the let's just go back a little bit. Your dad, who's a who's in the ministry, right? Who serves in the ministry, who's you guys go to church every day, and then to be um to tell your father of the abuse, right? And he said you trusted that you guys were going to, talk about it the next day, and then to have the abuser at your home, and everything seems to still be looking okay. Nobody's, your father doesn't look like he's reacted, but he then, then it's like he's siding with him. And so, yeah, you are confused. Why wouldn't you be confused? But even though, and listening to you, of how confused you may have felt, you knew, you knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that this was wrong, right? Even though the it was all conflicting, and that's the part that really played in there. You kept asking yourself, like, is this right, or is that, you know what I mean? You don't even look at it as an aspect of manipulation, because you probably didn't even know what that was.
I did
You
not.
just knew that something wasn't right, how you feeling wasn't right. And at this point now, you know that he lied his way through this whole thing. So then my thought is, like, how did that make you feel, knowing that, you tried to tell, but now you could, it, you telling didn't help. You telling ended up getting you in trouble. You know what I mean? Like, how at that point, with our viewers listening, like, how did that actually make you feel? And then how did it make you feel about God?
When it came to him, it stopped for a little bit and then it slowly started happening again. And when it started happening again, he kind of pretty much would manipulate my mind into thinking that it was okay. It's like at the moment I thought to myself, oh great, it's finished. It's not gonna happen again. This is the end of it. But that somehow I would start feeling alone again, and I was alone in this world, and no one loved me, no one cared for me, no one was there. And all of a sudden, the only one that was always there was him, and telling me, your parents don't understand you, your dad doesn't understand you, I'm the only one that understands you, I'm the one that loves you, I'm the one that cares. And me, as an ignorant child, because I was a child, I
Yeah.
honestly believed him. I believed that I was wrong. I believed that my thinking was incorrect, and that what he was telling me was the correct way. I
Hmm.
believed that we were boyfriend and girlfriend, but that I couldn't tell anybody because I had to wait until he could leave his wife to be with me. As
Hmm.
simple as that. Is like I would try to look at it any other way, but I think I kind of surrender that part of it. I surrendered to it. I surrendered to the fact that this is the way it's supposed to be,
Mm.
you know? And at first, I have to admit that God did not cross my mind in that aspect. I still went to church. I still was doing everything I was supposed to be doing at church. But it God, I wasn't so aware of who God is in my mind and the way that they used to preach it before. God was this holy person up there in the heavens. I was all the way down here on earth, and like there was still no connection between me and God, to be honest,
Got it.
at that point.
Hmm. You're still a child.
Hmm.
I mean, because I was in church all my life too, and I didn't really felt like, I started needing God until I became an adult. So,
Exactly.
when I was out on my own, and
Hmm.
I, my back was against the wall, and all I could need is God. Yeah,
Yes,
that's when I needed God. That's when I
exactly.
truly gave myself to Christ. So
Hmm.
I get that. I get that
Yeah.
because you're a child.
Yeah.
Ay, um. Okay. Let's keep moving then.
So then after that, I continued seeing him. Well, that day, I ended up actually throwing myself off the second floor.
Wow.
As I threw myself off the second floor, I felt a really strong wind come and push me back in the porch. And
Mm.
I saw a finger on my waist, como la silueta, the silhouette of a finger,
Mhm.
pushed me back on the porch. As I was being pushed back on the porch, my mom happened to pass by. I had fallen back on the porch and I had hit a plant that was on the side. I don't know what happened to the knife. The knife went somewhere, and it fell on the side like that. I don't know how it ended up on the side. But when I went out and my mom saw me, she started screaming because my hand is bleeding because I got cut from the base of the plant. So my mom is here thinking she was trying to slit her wrist. She's trying to kill herself, and she started screaming, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" But she hasn't, like, I'm in shock because I just felt myself fly back onto the porch.
Wow.
And the way that it used to work before, it was like when things like that happen, tú estabas endemoniada, you were demonized. You needed Jesus. You needed God in your life.
Mhm.
So they pretty much put me in this room and they call all the warriors of the church to pray over me, and praying and praying and praying. And I, even till this day, I remember no one really was speaking to me. No one really was asking me. No one really was saying, what happened? Why did it happen? Why did you do this? It was more like, I rebuked the devil in the name of Jesus and let her be free and stuff like that. And it ended. And then they said, she's doing great, whatever, whatever, because I figured there's no point of this. Like, I can't do this.
So
um,
there was no counseling.
no,
There was no follow up,
no.
no conversation.
My mom would try. My mom is, she's an awesome mom. My mom is an amazing woman of God. My mom, she had 10 kids. I mean, and the woman was, she was always very caring. She was always limpiando, cuidando, no cocinando. Like she did everything she could. Like my mom gave 100% of herself, you know? So in my eyes, I always saw my mom doing her best. I always thought that she did the best that she could. I've never saw any wrong in my mom. Yes, there was decisions that she made that they were wrong, but I never saw them at the moment, you know? I always thought that she was like always so like going, like the Energizer Bunny type of person, you know. So
Mhm.
she tried talking to me and she was like, "We love you, you know, this and this and that. God is there. Look for God. Let's pray more. Let's fast more. We're gonna pray together," and those type of things, you know.
But
So
imagine,
yeah,
you just said, just tell me what was going on in your mind
exactly.
when you wanted to throw yourself off the balcony or
Hmm.
whatever. that
Mhm.
you were throwing yourself off.
Mhm.
What kind of conversation that would have came out to be.
Yeah.
And now you're holding all that still on the inside of you. You don't know who to talk to.
Mhm.
And so now you're going to go into your you're well into your teenage years through your adulthood, carrying this, holding on to this.
Mhm.
Well, tell us some of the aftermath that you went through besides the suicide attempt that is a direct correlation to, not being able to talk about your abuse.
Well, after that, I became really closed up inside of me. I figured, don't say anything because every time you say something, it just gets worse. So I figure, don't say nothing. Whatever happens, just deal with it, put a smile on your face, and keep going. It's better that way. And then I that was when I was 13. I ended up being 15 years old. At that point, I started liking other guys in church my age, and I started putting my mind like in the idea that I can have a boyfriend in church. And one of the things that affected my future is something that I always say: I did not have a childhood. I didn't have a healthy childhood. But when I realized what had happened and what had came out of all that manipulation from this man, I realized I did not only not have a childhood, but I didn't have a youth. I didn't enjoy my youth years. It's like it was all about what he wanted, the way I that he wanted me to be. I was not allowed to speak to any other guy. I was not allowed to see any other guy because he would get really mad at me and he would call me names and he would tell me like, you're a whore, you're not good for nothing, you're betraying me, how can you do this to me? So um part of all that became that I became very distant from everyone. I became this malcriada, type of girl, bitter girl that was, always snapping at everyone, always angry, always bitter. Everyone would always tell me, "Oh, she's a troublemaker." My grades at school started like I was an A student. My grades started all going down. I repeated ninth grade like three times because I used to skip school to go see him. And it just became a loop. It felt like I was just
And that wasn't a red flag to your parents. Retelling
um,
that you had to repeat ninth grade.
according to the schools, I was repeating ninth grade because my grades were down. Because back then, I don't know if you remember, you could go in and the only class that took attendance was the first class. You went into the first class, they would take attendance, and then the rest of the day, no one took attendance. So no one knew if you were in school or not. So I would go to school, I would take my attendance, and as soon as the attendance was done, I would leave. So my parents did not find out that I had not like gone to school. It wasn't like they were aware of the fact that I wasn't in school. For them, I just had bad grades. I wasn't doing my schoolwork pretty much.
Wow. Okay.
Um and um and it wasn't like I was flunking. They would flunk me because I wasn't in the classes, but they didn't realize, oh, I knew when the teacher was gonna call, so I would put somebody else to answer the phone in the house, like because it was like I don't know. I did a lot of bad things because
Well,
of like
you did normal things that
yes,
normal kids would do when they're being neglected in a
not
way.
not guided correctly. Exactly.
Mhm.
And then after that, when I turned like 15, I started really liking this guy at church. And all of a sudden, he got really upset at me. He didn't want to talk to me or whatever. And at this point, at the level of understanding of a child,
Mhm.
I loved him. In my mind, in my understanding, I loved him. So I didn't want to make him mad. I didn't want to make him upset, but I also could not tell anybody that I was with him. So I was like, what do you want me to do? Everybody's asking me, why don't I have a boyfriend? I have to say something. I have to do something.
Mhm.
But he got so upset at me. And then at 15 years old, um, I was very unaware of this for many, 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 many years. But then I was told that I don't know, there was a conversation had with this other man at church that was also not an okay man. And at 15 years old, I came out of my house, and there was a man at church that when it was snowing, we lived up in Springfield, Mass. So it was a lot of snow all the time through the winter. And there was this man at church that whenever it snowed a lot, my father would send him to take us to school. At that day, I came out to go to school, and that man was waiting outside in his car. So I was very confused to see him there, and he's like, your father sent me to pick you up and take you to school. I was like, my father didn't tell me anything. And he's like, well, if you want to explain it to your father that you didn't come with me, that's on you. But like, that's what he told me. So I was like, okay, fine. So when I went to get in the car, he told me, don't go through the passenger door. You got to come through my door because that door is broken. And it was like a two-door car. And I kid you not, the moment I went to get into that car, I felt a knot on the pit of my stomach. And something was like telling me, don't do it, don't get in the car. Or like after that, I've learned to, listen to my
Listen
my
to
my
it,
gut
yeah.
feeling. And I remember literally getting this feeling inside of me that was telling me, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But I got in the car. And after I got in the car, he drove past the school. So at
Of
that
course you
point,
did.
I'm like, well, what are we doing? Where are we going? We just passed my school. And he's like, shut up. And I was like, okay, I was confused. And I was like, just leave me at the light. I'll walk to school. I'm still here. It's not that far. And he hit me. When he hit me, I was even more confused. I was like, what is going on here? And he kept talking to himself. He kept talking like in the third person and talking to somebody else. I'm not quite sure what he was saying. I couldn't understand. He was like mumbling words, and I honestly don't remember what was it that he was saying, but I kept telling him, let me out of the car. He hit me a second time. And at that point, I just like didn't fight anymore. I just kept sitting there. It got to the point where he drove for a while. I don't remember for how long he drove, but we parked somewhere, and he asked me for a kiss, and I told him no, like I don't want to kiss you. And he's like, oh, so you can kiss this person and name the other guy, but you can't kiss me. What's wrong with me? And I was at that point, I was even like more like, what is going on here? Um, and then after that, he kept talking to himself, and he hit me again. At that point, all my ribs hurt. Um, and after that, all the memories are very intertwined with one another. I remember little pieces. I know he raped me multiple times. Um, I remember that he dragged me through the woods, and he kept telling me that he was going to bury me. And then he kept saying he couldn't bury me. And then I ended up back in the car, and then he dropped me off, and he told me, if you tell anyone that this happened, I'm going to do it to your sister as well.
Mm.
So I remember, like, after that, I don't remember him dropping me off. I don't remember how I got to my house. I honestly didn't even realize until a few days later that it had been about 6 hours, 6 or 7 hours that I was with him. In my head, it seems like it was. It doesn't seem like it was 6 or 7 hours.
Right.
And when I came to, I was in my house in the bathroom. I was in the shower, and there was really hot water hitting my back. And my sister came into the door. It was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? At that point, I just started throwing up. I started throwing up and throwing up and throwing up, and I was trembling. I got out of the shower, and my sister's like, what's wrong? I was like, I'm sick. I'm sick. I told her. And
Mm.
so that was on a Monday. So I managed to get away with staying at the house from Monday to um, Thursday because my parents thought that I had the flu. I was just throwing
Right.
up all over the place. I couldn't sleep. It was a nightmare every time I closed my eye. I kept like temblando. Like I spent like a few days just throwing up. On Thursday night, my father went upstairs and he was like, "You've been sick for a few days already. You should be well enough now to go to church. Let's go to church." When we got to church, that man was outside out of the church waiting for my dad. They went into the office and I thought to myself, another time that I managed to get some hope inside of me. And I thought to myself, my dad's going to fix this. Something's going to happen. But then when he came out of the office, my father was like, "Get in the car. I'm going to go get your mother." Because I ran to him and he literally just told me, "Get in the car. I'm going to go get your mother." At that point, I was like, I've been here before. This doesn't go well. And I took off. I took off running and running and running and running. And I remember that my father told my brother-in-law, "Go catch her. She's running on the street." So I remember that I ran for a while before my brother-in-law caught up to me. My brother-in-law got me and brought me back, put me in the car. When we got to the house, they left him there sitting with me so I wouldn't go anywhere. And they went down into the basement and we're there for a while talking. And then when I went down they called me downstairs and they were like, "What have you done?"
Oh
And
my
I was like, I haven't done anything. It's like you made a man of God fall from his grace.
God.
And because I'm guessing that's the way that he explained it to them. And he told them that I tempted him and things like that. And I was like, "No, that's not the way it worked. Look at my ribs," because by that point my ribs were black.
Oh.
And and they were like, "No," because I had told my father that I wasn't feeling well, that my ribs hurt because I had fought in school. So my father at that point is saying, "No, that happened in school. You told me that you were fighting in school, and that's how that happened." So it was like a lot of stories all put together, and I wasn't believed. My older sister, was the only one that believed me, and my older sister told me, "Well, if you just come with me. I'm going to take you to the hospital." I honestly did not understand why I was going to the hospital. I thought that I was going because my ribs hurt. I didn't know that it was for a rape kit. I did not understand any of that at that point. And
But she knew. But
she
she
was
knew.
aware. She was aware. And so I'm like, "I'm gonna go get a bag and I'll go with you to the hospital." Because I wanted the pain to stop. And when I came downstairs, my father told me, "If you're gonna do this, that's fine, but I need you to know that they're gonna take your little brothers and sisters away. The testimony of the church is gonna go through the ground. Our testimony is gonna go through the ground. It's better if we handle this in-house. Like, let me figure it out." It's not that he didn't want to do anything about it. I'm sometimes I think that he was just wanted some time to think about how to deal about it. Um, but I was afraid. I got afraid and thinking that my little brothers and sisters were going to be taken away. And I told my sister, "You know what? Let's just give Dad a minute. Let him think about what he wants to do. And I'll go to your house tomorrow and I'll go to the hospital tomorrow." And the next day, I was planning on going to talk to my mom. And my mom had left this note under my door that morning. And when I woke up, I read the note. And as I read the note, I felt like I was in this alone. Um, I was gonna have to figure it out on my own. So I literally took all my books out of my bag and I put all the clothing that I can fit in there and I took off. I I was 15 in about 2 weeks. I just turned 15 when this happened. And I literally went into the streets at 15 years old. I was later told, years later, I found out that my dad, every night, my dad would go to work, my dad would go to church, and then after church, he would spend hours through the night looking for me, that he would not sleep. And I was just hiding because they told me, "If you don't want to be brought back home, you have to hide until at least you're 16." So I ended up hiding from him, and I did see him a few times, and I was just high because I didn't want to be brought back home. And it came to the point that I had been in the streets for about 7 months when I bumped into the first guy, the one that was my boyfriend.
Yeah.
And he told me, I've been looking for you. Where have you been? And this and this and that. And I was so happy to see him. He was my savior, you know. I was like, oh my God, somebody that loves me, somebody that cares, you know. I
Mm.
ran to him. I was like, help me, please. And he's like, I can help you. I can take you to a house where they help kids like you, but it's not here. It's like 3 hours from here. And I was like, great, you know. He's like, I can go see you there and I can help you there. At that point, he took me to that house, and I started living there with them. I started living in a house that they would allow him to come in and have sex with a 15-year-old.
Mm.
And I wasn't the only one in that house that was living the same story at that point.
Wow.
Um, and then after a little bit, I ended up back in the streets for about 3 years. It was from house to the streets to train trailers to wherever I
Hmm.
could find a place to stay, to be honest. And when
Was it the fact that it was just the way that you were living that made you want to just leave there because it wasn't comfortable, or you know what I mean? Like, I know that he put you there, he put you in a place where he's able to see you. A pedophile will have backup plans and backup routes and maps for days, in order to asphyxiate on their greed. However, what made you leave to go back to the streets, or it was it becoming uncomfortable, or was there more
no,
abuse on top of that?
the house was owned by two women, and one of the women got jealous and told me I couldn't stay there anymore. You need to leave.
Okay.
So that's how I was there for about 4 months, and she came to tell me like, you gotta go. So I ended up back in the street, and then when I was like almost 18 years old, at that point I was like, I had exhausted all my options, and I was still seeing this guy. Um,
Wow.
and at that point I told him I don't know where else to go, and like nobody wants to help me anymore. And he's like, well, just come stay. At that point he was living, um, he wasn't with his wife. And he's like, you can come to mine and stay with me, but you gotta hide because you're not 18 and they're gonna take me to jail. I was like, okay. So I was staying in his house, and whenever somebody would come over, I would hide in the closet until they would leave. And
Mm.
then when I turned 18, then he didn't care. When I turned 18, he was like, we can be seen now because nobody can say anything about it anymore. So then we started what seemed like a normal relationship at that point.
No, all this time he groomed you.
Yep.
All this time, you were around pedophilia all your life, pretty
Hmm.
much.
Hmm.
And I felt like that was my story. Like when I can think back, the looks that I would get, the the compliments, the um the inappropriate compliments that I would get as a girl, as a little child. You know what I mean? Like, pedophilia was all around.
Hmm.
Um, and then to hear you say, you can kiss him, but you can't kiss me. That was like sharing stories, and then he wanted a piece of the action. Like, it was
Hmm.
just horrific. The
Hmm.
to be
I
to
think
be treated like that. Like,
I
mm,
always think that, and this is not something that I understood when I was younger. This is things that we understand as we get older.
sure.
But I think that when the devil marks you for something, he marks you, and he makes sure that you become a target for that. Because for so many times and so many years, that was not the only time that I many times had to run from men that wanted to rape me.
Yeah.
Even in that house that I lived in, there was a guy that I used to fight him. I had to fight him all the time off of me because he wanted to rape me. And at first, I had this mentality, and I started thinking to myself, Is this the reason that I was brought into this world? Is
Mhm.
this is this the
Mhm.
reason that I'm here so men can just do with me as they please?" And then as I got older, I realized, no, it's because it's an open door, because you allowed yourself and you surrender to that and you accept it in your life to the point where you become a target, and just as you are a target, those demons, those men that have those demons, it's like they see you. It's like you're right there,
Yeah.
and the devil makes sure that you are their target and they will follow you, and it'll follow you until you break that curse, until you surrender it to God, until you say, God, this is not my story and this is not how my story ends. That will not be broken, because the only one that can break that curse is called Jesus. There is
That's
no
right.
other way around it. And I think that that is the reason that it's something that a lot of women, and um, right now, and I know this is a little bit ahead of the story, but right now I run a support group for women, and it is crazy the amount of women that come to me that I is not they have not been raped by one person, they've been raped by two, three,
No.
four, five men.
Yeah.
And I completely convinced myself that it's just because of that they will make sure that, hey, that's a target right there, and he puts his big target in your back, and all the demons in the world, they see it, and as long as that is not broken by the blood of Christ, it'll still be on you.
Mm, mm, mm. It's so true. Um, I believe that if the devil couldn't kill you while you were in the womb, he gonna try to destroy your life. He
Hmm.
tries to do it at childbirth or during the childhood season. Because if he can get you as a child and have you marked as a child, then it's open season after that.
Exactly.
Because the child doesn't
Literally.
know how to defend themselves. They
Exactly.
don't know how to go to God. These are things
Mhm,
that have to be taught, from parent to a child. And here goes back that parent accountability. Um, I can't stress enough um, to have to say this again on this platform, but it's so important for you to believe your child. Had Esther had one parent believe her, her her abuse might have ended a long time ago. You
very true.
know, it just goes to show how ignorant we can be as parents. That we often have to, oh man, we have to go back to our kids and ask for forgiveness because of the lack of protection that we gave. I had to go back to my oldest daughter, realizing, and I wrote a poetry piece about it called "Sleeping with the Enemy," that I was in a abusive relationship. That even though I had a child with him, he did not look after my oldest child as his, or even to be a fatherly figure to her. And so I even had to go back and realize that he was not very good to her, even though, like, she was a part of me and that she was just a child herself, that
Mhm,
I didn't protect her. Um, and so it's so important to, like, recognize as parents what the things that we lacked and the things that we didn't understand, or should have done better, because we don't have it all together. I was 15 when I had her, and so my mom helped me raise her. So she got a different kind of parent than when I started having kids as an adult. you know um but I just imagine just one parent would have made the difference in your life. And
mhm,
I know that you look at your parents as they did the best that they could, but that right there was not their best.
mhm,
That right there, they did what they did their best when it came to 10 kids, and their best with also doing ministry and that. But when it comes to something detrimental like that shift changes the course of your life to the point of just running away. At some point, they had to come to terms like, oh my God, what did I do? Because they literally pushed you away just by their actions, just by not supporting, the truth. And this is not to bash them. This was just the reality of it. And I'm sure that, God's grace, He's sufficient for us. And I know
Like,
that, you aren't where you are today if forgiveness wasn't a factor, So, you know, it's just the point of context for the sake of this broadcast, because not everybody is going to be watching this that's saved and don't understand the true nature of God's plan for us. And no, it wasn't this. Of course, this is not what He had in mind, but He uses this for our good in the end. He uses
exactly.
it for us to be able to look back and say, "Oh my God, look where I was. Look what I was doing. Look at how I was groomed. Look how I was living." And I was living and doing those things because I had no idea what else to do. I wasn't shown you were a child. And through the
Hmm.
eyes of you as a child, how did you overcome? Is there anything else that you'd like to speak on as far as the abuse is concerned, or are we getting to the point where where is God taking you, and how did
Well,
you start following after Him?
after that, I ended up getting pregnant from this man. He is the father of my three kids. And when I realized that I was living in a manipulative relationship, and I realized, oh my God, I was raped since I was 11. And I became so ashamed. When the truth hit me as an older person, as me coming into myself, I thought to myself, you allowed it. You were okay with it. So you better suck it up, because this is shameful, and they're going to talk about you, and they're going to step on you, and they're going to treat you like you're nothing. So might as well just hush and live your life the best that you can. So I
Mm-hmm.
stayed there. But the longer I stayed, the the angrier I became, the more hateful I became. I became this bitter, arrogant, angry mom, daughter, wife, person, human.
Wow.
And when I couldn't deal with it anymore, I turned into pills. I started taking pills. When the pills weren't working, I started drinking alcohol because it just numbed the pain. My heart was in so many pieces that I didn't even know how to put any one of them back together. So I decided, just like, put a smile on your face, and this is the best that you get from life. If you never say anything, if you never talk about it, nobody's ever going to know. Everybody's going to think that you have this perfect loving relationship with this man, and that you form a family, and this is what God had in store for you. And I used to play it off very well, and for many years, now that I speak my truth, everybody's like, what? What are
Mm-hmm.
you talking about? Because I made sure that I protected my kids from all the manipulative things. And though they saw some of it in his aggressiveness and in the way that he spoke to me, I protected them, and I kept everything a secret, which was a horrible mistake. Any parent that is out there listening, hiding things from your kid is not the best thing to do. Getting out of the situation is the right thing to do, but hiding it from your kids to the point that your kids are not aware of the fact that you are being hurt does not help them. And it's not going to help you in the future either. I think that you
Mm-hmm.
looking for help, the fastest that you realize that you're in an abusive relationship. Yes, there are things that you keep from your kids. Yes, there are things that you do to protect your kids, but to stay in that relationship to protect your kids, to say, at least my kids have a father, at least he is there and they see him, that is not the right thing to do. He is still, whoever your kid's father is still going to continue to be your father's kid. And if he wants to be a good father, even when you leave, even if you take your kids and build a different life safe from him, away from him, he still has the right to be a father. So it's going to
Mhm.
be up to him whether he wants to continue that relationship with him or not. But for you to stay in an abusive relationship just to protect the relationship of a father and a child is definitely not the right thing to do, because then you are going to suffer all that pain. And whether you realize it or not, you are going to project all the pain that you have onto your kids. I used to think I was the best mom in the world because I
Mhm.
was always cooking. I was always cleaning the house. I used to work. I used to be on top of everything. You take you to the game, take you here, take you whatever. But after I left the relationship, one time I was having a conversation with my kids, and I said, and they were asking, "How was your mom? How was this when you were young?" And I was saying, "Oh, my daughter used to do this." When they asked my kids, "How was your mom?" I'm expecting them to say, "My mom was the best cook in the world. My mom was the house was always clean and things like that." What my kids said was like, "Sorry, mom, but mom was always angry. Mom was always mad. Mom was always sad. Mom was always depressed. Mom was always yelling, you know? So I was present and I was there. I was also all those things that I didn't realize that I was projecting onto them
Mhm.
because I was holding it all in. I wasn't getting the help that I needed. And I was doing, again, the best that I could, but it wasn't my best, you
All,
know?
all you were doing was coping.
Yes, I
That's
was
it.
living,
The
yep,
cleaning, being supportive and being present, and all of that means absolutely nothing if you're not getting it reciprocated. If you're not,
exactly.
you are pouring, 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 because in reality that's how victims are able to cope with anything. They keep themselves busy.
Hmm.
So by maintaining busy, and overexerting yourself, me in my aspect, I like to overwork.
Yep.
Everybody would tell you, there's not a work ethic like you. There's not a nobody has your work ethic. And so I grew into that. I never went to school, prior to my high school diploma, but yet I get management jobs like no other because of all the experience that I've had.
Yes,
And so
I can relate to that.
I that's just one way of you coping. But for the sake of other viewers chiming in and relating to your story, how would you exit out of a relationship when you're now with your abuser as a full-blown relationship, because he groomed you into that? So how did you get out of that? Like, yeah, yeah, you're saying you got to get out, but how did you do it? What kind of support system did you have when you didn't have a support system when you were a child? How do you now have a way or a means to get out, to start over?
But God, but God. Um, yeah, I got to the point, like I said, that I was pill popper and alcoholic. I was a very functional alcoholic, mind
Mhm.
you. So it was very
I was
strict
too.
repetitive. Yep, nobody knew, but I woke up in the morning and the first thing I did was take a shot. It's like just to function. And it came to the point that I felt like nothing.
Mm.
I was like, it doesn't matter what job you got. It doesn't matter the beautiful kids that you have. It doesn't matter that you now have a grandchild. You are worth nothing. Um, and if you cease to exist right now, no one will miss you. And it was this thought that all of a sudden took over my mind and took over my heart. And all the things that meant something to me in life that was supposed to give me meaning, little by little, just stopped having not meaning, but they became invisible to me. They were there. I was living day by day, but I wasn't there. I became depressed, getting out of bed. I couldn't get out of bed. I wanted to get out of bed, but I couldn't get out of bed. But even then, I still got out of bed. I still went to work. I never missed a day of work in my life, well, unless I was sick, but just not to miss. And I still used to go to work and I was in there. I was checked out. And it was like I always say, this little light in my head that kept me going had just completely turned off. And I started thinking to myself, if this is going to be it, just end it. ended. And it was this thought started rolling in my mind over and over and over in this voice. And everything that was normal, like my kids growing up and not needing me anymore. It was like all these three little kids that always looked up at me and needed me for everything, all of a sudden are now adults and they don't need me anymore. And I would try to get their attention. And don't get me wrong, my kids didn't do anything wrong. They were living life. Life should be lived, you know? And they were getting, you know, in school, and there's the kids in school were important. And I would try to get time with them. But no, mom, I'm going to be with my friend today. And something that was so natural and so completely normal, the devil turned it into my head into, you are no longer needed. You are no longer wanted. You are no longer, there's no reason for you to be here. So if you cease to exist, it'll be better for them because they don't have to worry about you. They don't have, you know, they'll live their life fully without you here. And that thought haunted me for 2 weeks that I could not stop thinking about it, to the point that I just wanted the voices in my head to shut up. And I remember that I started looking for a place to take my life. I thought to myself, if I just disappear, they can go on thinking that I just disappear. And I don't want them to think that I committed suicide. I'd rather them think that I just disappear. Something happened to me. And this is the way that the devil works in your mind, to even put details in your head as to what to do something. But let me say something, you know, a lot of the times, us Christians in specifically, we seem to like point out and judge a person that says, I'm depressed, I'm sad, and we automatically think to ourselves, you know, oh, they're not praying enough, they're not looking for God enough, they're not reading the Bible enough, they're not doing everything they're supposed to be doing, you know. But it's not necessarily like that, because unless you've been there, you're not going to understand what it is to be depressed. Unless you've been in a place where you think that not even though your voice lifts us up from, like, you speak and your voice does not go up any higher than this. So if it doesn't go up any higher than this, God definitely cannot hear you. There are things in life that doesn't necessarily have to be on a spectrum of spirituality, and that's it. Yes, there's a lot of parts that are spiritual, and there's a lot of things that have to be treated in a spiritual way, but there are other parts that God put doctors here for. God put counselors here for. God put a whole bunch of things in the world for us to have access to, and we can go get help. It is okay to feel sad, to feel depressed, to feel like you can't do it, and go find somebody and talk to them. If that is the way you feel, scream out to the world. Find somebody that's willing to help. I guarantee you there is always, always, always someone that is willing to listen. You
That's
know,
right.
and I was in a place where I was ashamed to say I want to die, because I figured if I say that, they're just gonna label me as this demonized woman want to kill herself. Pues allá ella con Dios, you know. But that's not the
Mm-hmm.
way it is, you know. We have to come to an understanding. There are things that, yes, they're spiritual. There are things that are, something is out of balance in your life. Something, your traumas are catching up to you. Your life is catching up to you. The life
Mm-hmm.
that you're living is catching up to you. The abuse in your life is catching up to you. Whatever secret life you're hiding, it's catching up to you. It is okay to go get help. Please go get help. Go speak to someone, scream out until somebody hears you. But suicide is never, 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 never the answer. Um, and I got to the point where the only answer I saw was suicide, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I started looking for a place to take my life. And I found this beautiful mountain. And I thought to myself, this is it. I have to come here a few times and make sure that nobody comes up here. I lived in Colorado at the time, but there's many, many beautiful high mountains. And I went up to this mountain, and for hours, for a whole week, I went up there after work, and there was no cars. No cars went up there at all. I never once saw a car go up there. And I thought to myself, this is the right place to take my life.
Mm.
So I decided, I secretly kind of spend days with my kids, kind of like just soaking them in, you know, and talking to them and let them talk about whatever. I remember that I even called my mom and I just let her talk about whatever she wanted to do, kind of like trying to memorize her voice for some reason, you know. And that day when I went up to the mountain, and I was literally ready to put my foot on the gas and throw that car off that mountain. I got a text. And I thought to myself, I never get texts. I've never been a person to a lot of people text me. I was never a person to get a lot of texts, partially because of him, because I had to be very careful who texted me and who talked to me and things like that. I got a text from a friend of mine, a longtime friend that used to text me once in a while and send me like funny little things or things like that. And he's a pastor. He's actually my pastor now. And he sent me this text of a man sitting down, and he had an afro, and the afro was halfway through his head, and it said 50% loading.
Mm.
And I saw the picture, and I thought to myself, what a stupid picture. Like, I don't get it. So I texted him and I was like, why did you send me that? And he ended up calling me. I picked up the phone and I was like, I don't get it. Why did you send that? And he's like, because it's funny. Don't you think it's funny? I said, no, I don't think it's funny. And he's like, Esther was wrong. I've had you in my mind all day, and I decided to send you that text because I've been thinking about you all day. Why are you in my head? I said, I don't know. I have no idea. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm perfectly okay. Anyways, I'll talk to you later. I hung up the phone. And when I hung up the phone that I went to throw my car off the cliff, I look at the picture and I think to myself, 50%? 50% of what? I thought to myself. And all of a sudden, the atmosphere completely changed. And I started hearing this voice out of the speakers of my car, I don't know where it was coming from, out of my head, out of my imagination, out of the windshield, out of the outside. I don't know. It was all over. It was a voice that overtook everything around me while my foot is still on the brake of my car. And he was like, you've lived 50% of your life however you wanted to. You never listened to me. You did as you please. And now you want to take the rest of your life and just toss it down this mountain as if it's nothing? Who am I? What am I? And I was like, you show up now? I was crying. I started crying. And I was like, you come now when I don't want to live, when I don't have nothing to give you. I have nothing. And he was like, I only ask for you. You don't have to bring me anything. I've been here waiting for you to come to me. I've always been here, but you've decided to listen to every voice in your life and you've silenced my voice in your life. Like you even come to my church and you don't listen to my voice in my church. You sit in my church, you sit in my house and you do not listen to my voice. And I was like, what do you want from me? I said, I want to die. I want it to end. I have nothing to give you. I have no strength. I have no love for life, no love for you, no love for anyone. And he was like, I will be your strength. I'm not asking you to give me anything. I'm asking you to let me give you something. I will bring you strength. I will take you the 50% of your life that you have left. Just give me a chance. Let me draw. Let me be the one to draw the rest of your life. It was like he was asking me because it felt like my whole life at that moment. I thought to myself, all my life I've been drawing my own life, my own decisions. And it was like he was asking me, give me the pencil, let me draw the rest of your life myself. And I started crying and crying and crying and crying. And I just felt this peace come over me. And I was like, if you want me to get out of this mountain, if you really, really, really want a life with me and you want to have a relationship with me, you're going to have to help me turn this car around because I don't have the strength. And all of a sudden, I'm telling you, my car started moving in its own direction. My hands were not barely even touching the wheel, and my car went on reverse the opposite side, and I left that mountain. When I left the mountain, I called my friend and I said, you want to listen to me? You want to know what's wrong with me? What's happening with me? I'm coming to you. Or you're going to have to sit down and you're going to have to listen to me. Are you willing to listen to me? He's like, I'm willing to listen to you. And that's when everything started. When I came here to Florida, I spoke to him. He listened to me, him and his wife. He cried with me. He sat down with me the next day. He spoke some more. We cried again. And
I'm
when I came,
crying right now.
believe
This
me,
is
I
so powerful. Like, how can you not?
how
Like, how
can
can how can you tell this story to anybody and they it not compel or demand change? Like, I'm already changed and transformed just by listening to what
that's what I'm
happened to
saying.
you.
But God,
Like,
but
oh
God,
my God.
he
Wow.
he he definitely has been good to me. And after I came here, that I spoke to my friend and I told him I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna ask him for a divorce. I was empowered. I was like, God's gonna give me another chance. And I went back to Colorado after speaking to my friend. And I went back to Colorado and I remember that I sat with him and I was like, I want a divorce. I can't do this anymore. I know you don't love me. I don't love you anymore. This is a horrible relationship that we're living. We barely used to even talk to one another at that point. And I remember that he said, okay. I was like, what? Really?
Wow.
And I was like, something's wrong with this picture. About a few days later, that I thought everything was going great. I was like, God is really doing something with him because he's really okay with me leaving. And I started putting everything in order for me to leave, and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, one day I came in and he just had this look on his face that I said, uh oh. And he was like, "Why is there a can of paint right there?" Because he had bought a can. I had bought a can of paint to paint a wall, and I was like, well, it's for that wall. Do you want me to paint it for you before I leave?" And he was like, "What do you mean before you leave?" And I was like, "Remember, like I'm getting my own apartment. You're staying here." Like he's like, "What the are you talking about?" And he started screaming and yelling like he was not aware of what had happened, which was one of his normal things to do. And he just started yelling. I looked at my son. My son automatically knew he needed to go in his room. And just, I told him, just put your earphones on, go to your room. And we started arguing and arguing. And this man turned all the radios, all the TVs up to 100 in the house. He went all over the house and he started turning all the radios really high. I went to go get my keys because I figured if I leave, he's not going to hurt my son. He was never aggressive with them or anything. And I was like, if I could get out of the house, I'm out. So I went to grab the keys. He took the keys from me and threw them. So I went and went into the room. And when I went into my room, he started choking me. And he choked me and choked me and choked me until I passed out. When I came back to, he was yelling and screaming. He would choke me again until I would pass out. And he did that from like 9 o'clock until like 2 o'clock in the morning. At that point, I honestly thought that I was going to die. Um, I had no hope whatsoever. I just thought this is how I die.
Mhm.
Um, and he choked me so many times that like I forgot how many times he did it. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, he went and he turned off all the TVs, all the radios, and he went to bed like nothing. So I lay down in my bed without moving until around 6 o'clock in the morning that he got up and he left. At that time, I took all my stuff. I went and woke up my son. I was like, "Let's go. We gotta go. We gotta go." Um, I took him to school and I went to work and I'm thinking to myself, "What do I do? Oh my God, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to
You went
go."
to work after all of that?
I did. I think I was in shock at that point. I was
Man,
trying
you're
to
strong.
I was trying to figure out what to do, and I was thinking to myself, "What do I do? Do I go get my son? Do I pick up? Do I go to my daughter's house? What do I do?" Um, and while I was at work, my little sister called me from here, from Florida, and tells me what's going on. And I was like, "What are you talking about? What's going on?" He's like, "Your husband just called me and told me that if you come close to him, he's gonna open your throat from side to side and watch you bleed." And I was like, "Okay, this is real." So
Mhm.
I thought to myself, he doesn't act up in front of my kids, so I'm gonna go back to the house with my daughter and my son. and I'm gonna pick up all my stuff and I'm gonna go to my daughter's house because he always try to look good for my kids. So I figure if I go with them, nothing's gonna happen. Unfortunately, it did not went like that. He went ballistics.
I was
He
gonna say.
went. But you know what? I'm glad it happened because it was the only time that my kids witnessed something like that, and then they understood why I wouldn't go back. Because if that hadn't happened, they would have never understood why.
Yeah.
But at that point, he came after me, and I remember that I was grabbing my stuff, and I started hearing my daughter screaming, and then I heard my son saying, "That's mom, Dad, what are you doing? That's mom." And it was because he had came after me, I guess, with a knife to stab me on the back, on my neck. And my son got in the middle and pushed him away. And at that point, my daughter was like, "Forget it, forget everything, just leave everything, let's go." And that was the last time that I was there. I left the house. I ended up getting an apartment over there in Colorado, and then he started following me around. I would wake up in the night and look outside, and he was parked outside. And at that point, I told myself, nope, this is not going to happen. So I literally put everything that I could in my car and I drove to Florida. And I came here and I walked into the church one day and I told that pastor, "I'm here. I need help. Would you help me?" And
Hmm.
from that moment on, we started uh, a long, long process of talking, of him corrigiéndome. There are days that he laughed with me. There are days that he yelled at me. There are days that we cried together. My pastor is a psychologist. So it was good to have him there. And I went also to psychiatrists. I went through a lot of counseling. I went through a lot of help. Um, and out of all this craziness and out of all this things that happened, all of a sudden I started falling in love with this man called Jesus. And all of a sudden, he became so real to me. And this God that when I was younger wasn't even there, he was so high up. I remember the pastor was talking one day and he said, "Do you not understand that Jehovah himself got up from his throne to come and meet you where you're at?" And I kid you not, I felt like he got literally got up and just met me up where I was at. And from that day forward, I just started falling in love with this call God that heard of since I was little, but I never met. I never knew. And I started knowing who he was, and I started completely falling in love with him. And one day I was talking to Pastor, and Pastor was like, "Esther, why don't you write a book?" I thought to myself, like, "Can write a book? Can write a book? This man's crazy. Can write a book?" And I didn't even put mine to it. And then he told me again, "Esther, you should write a book." And I was like, I don't like maybe who knows, maybe one day I'll write a book. Y pasaron like a few weeks later, and he was like, "Esther, did you start your book?" I was like, "You're seriously like yes, I'm telling you, write a book." So I actually started writing a book, and I have to say, it took me about a year and a half to write the book. And one day I remember that I called Pastor and I was super happy because I had written this book. And in the process of writing that book, I also went to Pastor because I remember that I was driving him insane because all of a sudden I met this God that I was falling in love with, and the Bible had become so real to me that I had so many questions, and I was driving him absolutely insane. And I told him, "Pastor, why don't we have a group here, a support group, like where women like me can get together and talk?" And he looked at me and he said, "Let's work on you first."
That's
I,
right.
I said, "Okay." So I in the process of me writing the book, I spoke to Pastor about 2 years after I had spoken to him about that. He goes, "Esther, it's time." At that point, I didn't even know what he was talking about. And I was like, "It's time for what?" And he was like,
Right,
it's,
because you asked him, let's do a support group. Not that you would be leading it, but that you would be part of this support group.
yes,
But then he said, that's a great idea, but let me put it in the back of my head because she's going to be the one to lead it. And look,
yes,
3 conferences later.
two
You also,
two
oh, two
conferences.
conferences
Okay, yeah.
later, okay, and also support group on top of that.
Yeah, we have
Yeah,
the conference grew from the support group. We opened the
right.
support group, and we started working in the support group. It is now a beautiful group that gets together. Um,
And tell
and
us some of the things that you discuss in that support group.
what was that?
What are some of the things that you guys talk in the support group, and what kind of resources do you offer?
We talk about everything and anything. We have a safe zone. We do let everybody know that we are under the HIPAA law. And we are under the license of our pastor. So we have to be very careful with what we do, how we do it. I have them all go through the HIPAA law and have them understand what the precautions and repercussions are if you speak outside of this group. And they are all very understanding. But we speak about people. I've had girls come in that I've had nowhere to go. I've had girls come in that have gotten beaten up by the husbands. I have
Hmm.
girls that are there that they just don't feel like they're worth it. They've had no traumas in their life. They're young girls that are like 20 years old. They just feel like they have nothing to offer the world, and they come in and we let them know, hey, there is a purpose for you in this world. There is a reason why you're here. We work with Help Now, which is one of the programs here in Osceola County. It's actually the only domestic violence shelter that we have in Osceola County. I am also a domestic violence advocate with that program. Um, we work in the conferences that we've had. We have the commissioner from our city come in and speak. We've had the Kissimmee Police Department go in and speak, but they come in and they teach all the women what to do, what not to do, how to do it. When you call 911, what do you do and how do you do it? We also have what we realize in within the support group is the fact that a lot of the girls want help, they just don't know how to get it, or who to go to,
Hmm.
or who to speak to, or how to do it in a safe way where their husbands don't beat them up, or otherwise, or the wives don't beat up the husband, because it always can go both ways.
Sure.
And I've seen it. So what we do is we connect with the community, and we have shelters, um, groups that work directly with domestic violence, the police department. We have health insurance companies. We have a clinic that sees people that have no insurance. We have a group that comes that they work with immigrants that have been abused, that are being beat up, and they don't say anything or do anything because they're afraid they're going to be deported. So we have them all that day in that conference come into the church. So they have direct access to them, and they can go around and ask questions, and we have some of them become speakers, and we just put the help all right there in that room for them.
Girl.
Um, and it,
Girl. I can't. Oh my God. So you have a pastor who is a psychologist.
yes, who's amazing. So,
I've
and not only
always
is he,
said, I've always said, like, I feel like, yes, like, you know how often you hear the people say that the church is supposed to be a hospital? You know what I mean? Like, he's really a hospital. Y'all really a hospital. And
yes,
oh my God, this is from my first episode back 3 years ago, where I said, I feel like the church like should have a safe haven for
yes,
things like this, and that they should coexist, and that
yes,
it shouldn't be such a red tape,
yeah.
to have to, integrate this. And to hear you say this about
God,
a
but
church
God, I'm
that's
telling you, but
doing it,
God,
that's something that I've always thought, that it
yes,
should just be the regular norm.
yes,
Like,
100%.
shout out to your church. Shout out
Yes,
to your pastor
MLP.
who saw the vision and is extending it, and kind of help mold you into the person you needed to be so that you can head this thing. I'm like, oh my God, my mind is just so blown and just
Yes,
overjoyed with the excitement that what this church is doing. Like, tell
yes.
us
You can go
more.
and open it in your church. You can go do one up there.
Oh man, I mean, I would love it. Like,
Yes, it is a great
wow.
resource. And the thing is that we've seen like the conference is it just blew up. We were thinking of this little thing that was gonna happen and we were gonna get together and all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, what just happened?
Right.
You know,
Because it's
and
real. This sort of thing is this whole background. Your whole background. It's everybody. Everybody has gone through some sort of sexual trauma. It seems like
you
at
know
least the
what?
majority of people. You know.
I learned something with Pastor that has been one of my biggest lessons ever. I used to, we have a choice. We have a choice on what to do with what we've lived. You have two choices.
Mm,
Your first choice is to be a victim, play the victim, and live your whole life like, I bendito, this is what happened to me, and just allow to be, let yourself be pitied by everybody and whatever. Or like Pastor told me, Esther, you can take every little thing that has happened in your life and make it into a stairway into the prophetic destiny that God has designed for you. That's what you can do. Make steps out of every hurt, out of every pain. And instead of them being over you, you're going to walk right over them. And you're going
mm,
to allow them to take you where God is taking you. Because, like the song says, whatever the devil intended for bad, God is going to
mhm,
take it. And I always say, God doesn't take it and uses it for good. God takes it and allows you to choose whether you're going to use it for good or you're just going to discard it.
mm,
He tells you, this is what I can do for you. Do you want it? Because it has to be a choice that comes from within.
very, very
You
true.
have to accept forgiveness because in order for me to surpass all my pain and all my hurt, I had to say, I am willing to forgive. I feel no hate in my heart, not for any one of them. I pray that God saves them all. I
Mm,
don't care who it is, what they did to me. I don't care. I feel no hurt. How did that happen? Because I took my heart and I said, Jesus, I can't handle this. I need you to teach me how to forgive. And in
mhm.
order for him to teach you how to forgive, you have to go through the pain.
Yeah.
Because as I wrote that first book that I started writing, I would take the laptop, I would throw it on the floor, and I don't want to look at this laptop. I don't want to hear the story. For a year and a half, I wrote my first book. And after I had written it down, I called Pastor, bien contenta, bien happy. And I was like, Pastor, I finished the book. I'm going to send it to you. And when I'm about to send the book to him, the book disappeared. I looked all over for that book and I called him crying. I was like, you know what? No es de Dios. It's not in God's. God did not write for me to write a book. This is not. And he's like, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it another day. Another day was that he was like, take your laptop, take it to Best Buy and have them check. They were there for an hour checking the book. Nothing. No apareció nada. A year and a half down the drain. And then Pastor, he gave me, I think, like maybe 4 weeks. And he came after me like, did you start writing the book again? I was like, don't start with me. I don't want to hear anything about a book. I don't want to know anything out about a book. And
Wow.
then it me dijo de nuevo, did you start the book? Did you start writing the book? And I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to fight this man on it. I'm just going to write the book. And I sat down. It took me about 7 months to completely finish the book. And when I sat down and I read my whole book a second time around, I just fell to my knees and I started asking God for forgiveness for being so mad for the first book being disappeared, because I realized that this book had been written by somebody completely different.
Mhm,
The first book had helped me heal. And because that book helped me heal, I was able to write the right book.
mm,
The first book was full of hate, was full of anger, was full of bitterness, was full of pointing fingers at this person did this and did that. And then when I
mhm,
read the second book, I realized, who is this woman?
mhm,
This woman is a complete different woman that is speaking now of healing, of restoration, of the providence of God over her life in the worst time of her life. So it's like, I thank God for every process because even the processes that seem like, why am I going through this? If you put it in God's hands, He will make something out of it. And those bad moments will become steps to where God wants to take you. So you have to choose. You have to choose. Am I going to use the bad of my life and the bad moments of my life to become a better person? Or am I going to stay bitter and angry and just rely on the victim part of my life, you know?
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot easier to say than actually do.
Of course,
So, like,
100%.
right. So when I tell people it's a choice, you gotta choose it. But with that, understand that you have to apply it. And when you apply it, it requires your patience because you're not going to see the manifestation of
Oh,
what
no.
patience really looks like, what forgiveness really looks like until you start applying it. And then it's going to be a practice. This is just a practice that you have to continue to do.
Hmm.
You got to put it into practice. And what happens when you continue to put things into practice? It becomes perfect, and
Yep.
then or it becomes something that you're able to even relate to. So
Yes.
it's just you have to practice,
Yes.
practicing until you're good at it. Like, just a quick testimony on my part. Like, I was in foreclosure not too long ago, like literally like maybe 30 days ago. And then I just said, well, the Lord knows what happened.
Hmm.
Like, I was 100% commission at my job and they weren't giving us any inventory. And how can you sell what you have in the store if if fresh stuff isn't coming in? And so there's
Hmm.
there's like six other associates too, and you have to share a truck when they give you 30 pieces. I don't how do you make money? And I wasn't
Hmm.
making any of that. There was times I couldn't if I wasn't going to be able to pay the mortgage, I couldn't pay the utilities. I had enough just to bring food to the table. Like, it was like that. And then miraculously I get a promotion, and now I'm in this promotion, and now steady money is coming because now I'm salary. But it took a toll, and then I found myself, God, a year later I haven't been paying the mortgage because I'm still trying to make ends meet from the 6 months of not getting any,
Yeah.
and so, like, I'm like, Lord, we've been here before.
Yes.
We've been here before. So it was like sweatless, you know, being, I wasn't perturbed. Like, I just like, okay, I'm just in this situation and they're no longer taking my, my payments. So we're in foreclosure. And I'm like, okay, well, Lord, you know what I'm dealing with. You know what I have. You know what I'm capable, you know. And so, I constantly took their calls and, you know, how can we try? And I tell them what happened, and I'm trying to get, mortgage relief and all that other stuff, but I'm still applying. I'm practice. I've already practiced. I'm here.
Hmm.
I'm just here with it. Like, I'm like, I understand where we are, and then next thing you know, I get this letter, a notification that, hey, we want to approve you for a loan modification. We need you to pay this amount on this day, and that'll help, determine whether or not you can be able to afford the payment. So
Hmm.
I go ahead and I make the payment, and I'm thinking, yo, I gotta pay this, I gotta pay the next payment. And they reversed my payment. Like, why did you reverse it back to me? I thought we was good. Like, they're like, no, we want you now to assume the loan, which I have been trying to do because
Hmm.
the house was in my ex-husband's name. It's not in my name. So I've been dealing with the account since '09. And so now, on in God's timing, I just saw my lawyer today, and we just filled out the paperwork and get everything notarized. So I'm just excited
That's
because
awesome.
I applied what I've been
Yeah.
doing by not having to worry about, God, there's 15 people in this house, and I know you don't want us out on the street, so you just gonna have to make it happen. And he did. And
Yep.
so, but I didn't just get here. I'm saying all that
Exactly.
to
No,
say
yeah.
that I didn't just get here.
No.
You
The
know what I mean? Like,
mine, it
yes, go
didn't
ahead.
happen overnight. Like, let me
No,
tell
it's
you,
never.
this all started when I was 40. I am gonna be 48 in a few months.
I'm 48.
So it wasn't something like it wasn't something that happened overnight. I've
Right.
tried, I've been down, I've been
Sure.
higher, a little higher, and then down again.
Yeah.
It's been a roller coaster. And there are times that I think to myself, like, what am I doing? Like, how am I doing this? And to be honest, on that first conference that we had, it was the first time that I spoke about any of it. I had
Whoa.
never, ever, ever in my life spoken about anything that I had lived. And the thing is that my pastor saw how nervous I was and how like I didn't know how to do it, that he actually got up and he started giving his testimony that he had been abused when he was a child as well. So it was something that completely opened a complete platform to the whole community, to the church, because the church was full of the community in there, you know. So it's not it's not something that happened overnight. It's taking a lot
Yeah.
of prayer, it's taking a lot of effort. Like you said, it's taking me taking steps. You know,
Yeah.
it's taken me leaving a lot of friends from my past behind that led me to things that weren't right.
Yeah.
Like Pastor told me one time, if you want to be an eagle, then you can't hang around with chickens because they don't fly. It's true.
Oh man, that's
So
good.
if like you want to fly, then hang around with eagles that know how to fly. It can teach you to fly high. You
Mm,
know, and if not, you're gonna stay in the ground. So that's what I started doing because he knew that I was still hanging around with wrong people that led me to things that weren't right. You know, and little by little, I started changing my way of living. I started changing where I hung out. I started changing the people that I hung out with. You know, I now started changing and started hanging around with the pastores. I started hanging around with the ministers of the church. I started hanging around with the people that wanted to look for God, that wanted to pray, that wanted to be in church instead of at the mall or anything like that, you know? And I physically noticed not only the way my mind started changing, the way my heart started changing, the way the way I spoke started changing. You know, I started
mhm.
calming down. My answers were not as quickly as they were before. I started thinking about what I was going to say before I said it. You know, I started saying, okay, Jesus, what would you say? You know, what would you do? Because right now I'm trying to do things right, you know. But I was accustomed to living life, however, you know,
Yeah.
and I had to literally surrender. I
Yeah.
had to surrender my ego, my desires, my wantings, the
That
way
part.
that I wanted to live life and say, Jesus, take the wheel because I can't.
Yeah.
I can't
Literally.
do it, you know? Yeah.
And he did
Yes, he
on that
did.
mountaintop.
Yes, he did. He did. He
Girl,
has been awesome.
I'm still on that. He's like, if you want me off of here, you're gonna have to move it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what kind of a demand was that? But he
It,
did.
it,
He
it was
met you
the
where
only
you
one.
were.
It was the only one I knew I could make that was like, I don't know. I didn't
Right.
know what else to
An
say.
impossible situation.
Yes,
Impossible. Only he
yes,
could do that.
yeah.
Man, oh man, you gave us so much to unpack here. Like, what can I take away from all of this? Just
But God, that's all I say. I always say, oh God, pero Dios.
wow. Esther, thank you so much for
You're
your
very welcome.
story. I might have to do a blog after this one. Like this was a tearjerker for me, and I don't cry often. Yeah, I don't cry often at
Yeah,
all because I felt like I've heard it all, I've seen it all. Like, and then he puts people in your path to kind of humble you. Like,
Jesus is awesome.
man, he is.
He is awesome.
The notes that he played on your heart to change you. I
Hmm.
think that's what if I had to take anything away that resonates in your story is that he played the keynotes on your heart to change you. It from the outside looking in, you were an impossible character, right, for other people to deal with. Like
Yes.
even your breakup. At first, that guy was not present when you told him,
Yeah.
it's over, we're done, you
Yes.
know. And then for the reality to hit the way that it did, I mean, that was just the devil using him,
Hmm.
um, to control you. And he was losing grip of that. I can imagine, the devil losing grip when he was trying to tempt Jesus in the wilderness,
Mhm.
how he lost his grip where he thought he had him, and just couldn't, and it couldn't hold on. And so that's detrimental to a demon, but for you to be able to be still courageous and leave after that, and then wanting to start all over and then going to the correct support system that you needed. You went to where you needed to find God. And
Mhm.
so, first of all, shout out to your church to being open to helping
MLT.
you, just so that, you know, he God gave you um um he led you to where you needed to go.
Mhm.
And I'm just so grateful that he led you down a path that you were able to start your journey. And when you did, your pastor knew when you were ready. And so that, some pastors, they become jealous of their protege. But others, and you, like your pastor decided, like, no, it's time for you to fly. It's
Oh,
time
yeah.
for you to, to continue the work, because we don't go through the things that we go through and God intends them for us to keep them secretive. No, every good thing comes from God. And so,
Yeah.
what came out of this situation that was an impossible situation, a horrible situation, it ends up turning out to be for God's glory,
Amen.
so that you can turn around and say, but God, you know?
Yes.
And so it's not a hopeless story. It's not something that can just end and it just be what it is. No, you have, and he's going to continue to elevate you as long
Mhm.
as you allow him. You know,
Mhm.
the sky is not the limit. I
Yep.
hate when people say, "Oh, the sky is the limit." Well, then if it has limits, I don't want it. You know, I don't want a disconnect or discord, from my God. So,
Amen.
um, oh man, this I can just keep talking, but we already coming up to 2 hours special, so we're just gonna end. But before we do, what would you like to tell our viewers? And for someone who is just like you, what would you leave them?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to David and Kelly. I love you guys. And thank you to my pastors that not only they encourage you to grow, but like you said, they don't hold you back. They do give you the time and they know when to stop you so you have time to grow. But they're not pastors that want to hold you back. They're pastors that want you to grow. And I think Pastor Lopez, both of them, I love them with all my heart. I thank you for allowing me this opportunity. And honestly, to all the women out there, I always say it and I will continue to say it again. It's not what he said, it's not what she said, it's not what mom said, it's not what anybody says, it's not what you even tell yourself. It's what God says about you. And God already designed a life for you. And it's a life that is happy, it's a life that is going to guide you. You are able to. God is able to, He's willing to, and He wants to help you grow. He wants to see you get better. If you are in a situation that you need to get out of, do it safely. Don't take decisions without thinking of what it is you're doing. But if you're like, go to the right people. Like I said before, there's always somebody willing to help, willing to listen. Go to somebody at church that is willing to listen to what you got to say. And you know what? Be blunt with them. Be open. Don't hide what's happening because you're ashamed or whatever. No, be open, be blunt, be truthful, and get help. Believe me when I tell you, it might seem like there's no hope, and it might seem like wherever you're at is the best that you can be, but that is a lie of the devil. You know,
Mhm.
God always has better for you. God is always, always waiting for us to tell him, hey, Jesus, take control because I can't. So there is hope. God will give you the strength. It's not easy,
No,
but it's definitely possible. And believe me when I tell you, if God changed me, he could change anybody.
that's right.
If God made me new, if he gave me a new life, and he taught me how to forgive. He not only forgave me, but he taught me how to forgive others. And I am so grateful for him. Like, um, just don't give up. Don't give up. Get out of the situation. There is life after abuse. There is life after rape. Rape does not define you. Abuse does not define you. Being not, not valued does not define you. What anybody says about you is not what it is. What God says about you, that's what it is.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, well, that concludes our episode 2 of season 4 of the Took My Choice Away Survivor series with author, survivor, my sister, Esther Colon. When the book release is going to be Thursday?
Thursday,
Thursday.
November 7th
The
at 2830 North Orange Blossom Trail at 11. And it's a whole conference where actually our pastor teach other people how not to stay behind. It's called Relay. The
Relay.
conference is about learning how to leave a good path, like leave a steady place behind where somebody else can take what you've left when you are not longer there. So if you want to come by, we'll be there.
All right
God
now.
bless you.
God bless you. Whew. I'm going to be loading this episode also on YouTube on my
Okay.
channel, Nettie Long Poetry, as well as my group channel, which is also on Facebook. But
Okay.
I'll tag you on that. That way you
Okay.
have it. And all right. Until next time, God bless
Thank
you.
you so much. God bless.